Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Managing with Mind and Heart podcast. I am your host today, Ethan Nash, and boy, I have a treat for you today. Today, I have a guest on the podcast, and her name is Jinesha Jain. Folks, I'm going to give you a phrase here that I think paves the way for what Jinesha and I will be discussing today. And that phrase is, you don't act from the knowledge you have. You act from the state that you're in. If you've listened to this podcast long enough, you understand that self-awareness, self-regulation is foundational for effective leadership. And we're going to be talking about some tools to help leaders get more grounded and centered in the moment when things are intense, as well as just more holistically. And if you're skeptical of any of this right now and you just want tactical, practical skills, just give this a listen. Give it a shot. I'm a huge believer in the things that we're talking about today, and I have found some of these practices to be really life-changing. And I mean that, life-changing in terms of how I'm able to show up as a leader and human being. So Jinesha, who is Jinesha? I stumbled upon Jinesha through her TedX talk. And I reached out. I wanted to have a conversation with her because the stuff that she was talking about resonated with me. But Jinesha Jain, she is a corporate professional and real estate entrepreneur who works at the intersection of performance psychology and strategic clarity. Her work focuses on helping high performers move from constant mental overdrive to more intentional decision-making, communication, and leadership. She brings a practical, grounded approach to understanding how internal state impacts external performance. So, I hope you enjoy. All right. Well, welcome to the Managing with Mind and Heart podcast, Jinesha.
Thank you, Ethan.
It's great to have you here. I'm excited about this conversation today. I actually had maybe it'll be an interesting question to ask you right off the bat, but something we kind of discussed in the background before we started recording. So was there a moment for you in your life when you realized that success didn't really feel the way you expected it to?
Yes, I mean, that's a beautiful question, I have to say, and it takes me back the memory lane. And I wouldn't just say yes or no to it. So I'll give you a little bit scoop into what was happening to me, where I was, and then possibly get you to the answer of this question. Ethan, I originally come from India. I came to States in 2018 with a huge bag of responsibilities, expectations, ambition, all of that was fuel to me. So I remember I was grateful that I was put in a position and had the opportunity to come to States to pursue my studies. Soon after I got into corporate, and then I've always wanted to do something of my own. And I started my real estate business on the side. So on paper, everything looked like a success story. You would be thinking, wow, where is this going?
All right.
On paper, everything looked great. Having a corporate job in one of the top companies, senior position, running a business at the side, life was perfect. At the same time, I felt heavy. I felt on all the time. And that's when I started to think that if this is what I've always wanted to do, if this is success to me, why am I not satisfied? Why am I not at peace? Why am I not happy? But just like every other Gen Z or millennial, who has the time to stop? So I kept telling myself, there's no time to stop, reflect, or pause. I'll lose the momentum. Never mind the problems. And I kept on hiding them under the bed. So one day, I was on a FaceTime with my mom. And people say mothers know everything. That is very much true. Even with a big smile on my face, she asked me something that that was the catalyst in my story. She asked me, Janisha, are you happy? I was like, yeah, what do you mean? She was like, you don't have the same smile you used to have. I couldn't answer her reason because I know what she was talking about. All the feelings, everything, the internal state, the heaviness, the feeling of always being on, the question that if this is success, then why doesn't it feel like success? Now came to the surface, and there was no more hiding. So that was the time when I definitely felt my definition to what success, or my perspective to what success is not what I thought when I started the journey.
And I'm sure we'll explore this throughout our conversation, but now you have the hook for me, which is, what did you come to realize, through that, mother provoked epiphany that you had there, right? Like,
Yes.
what did you come to find and learn about yourself?
Yes. The biggest thing I realized is that I'm always living one step ahead in my mind. That's why I'm not engaging with the present or now. I'm either thinking too much ahead, I'm still in past, which was indeed affecting my decision-making skills, my clarity towards what I want to pursue and how I want to do something, my relationships with, be it professional or personal, because again, I was always in my head, either being too ahead or being in past. I was never in the present. That was the biggest thing that I felt, that indeed created a lot of emotional exhaustion for me. That created, I had the opportunities right in front of my eyes, but because I was overanalyzing, overthinking, I had to let them go. And it felt like the answers were right there, but you know how you're in a room and the answers are always there, but just because you hear so much noise, you can't find them. I realized that it's not the capability, but it was the lack of clarity that was leading me to be not so much focused, to not be fully efficient, or really do something with up to my potential. And that was, I think, the biggest thing that came to surface when I started to seek a little more internal state.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. And I'm sure again we'll be circling back and around these themes throughout this conversation. But I guess I just want to say again, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. And when I heard your TEDx talk, I just kind of thought to myself, this is somebody I want to talk to. I mean, I think a lot of the themes that you explore are things that our listeners are interested in, things that we touch on throughout, on this podcast, things from, hey, to be an effective leader. It starts with the internal journey, right? It starts with being grounded. It starts with self-awareness. It starts with learning how to be present in the moment as well, be present with the people that you're with and leading. And so there's probably way more topics than we have time to explore as far as topics I'm interested in here. But maybe this looks like a little bit of a pivot, but bear with me, everybody. I want to talk about something that we talked about when we first connected, which is like, you're obviously a high performer. You've been around high performers. Presumably the people that listen to our podcast consider themselves high performers. But like, why? I mean, because I think it's something we can all relate to. Like, why do high performing leaders, for example, still find themselves reacting in ways that they later question? You know what I mean? Like, what caused the disconnect between knowing better and actually doing better in the moment? Like, I know I shouldn't be reactive, or I know I should be present, but yet I do it again.
Absolutely. I feel like there's almost everybody who has felt this at least once in their lifetimes. I've seen or come across colleagues and they're like, hey, I shouldn't have said this in my one-on-one with my executive or my manager, or even the other end of the spectrum, that maybe I should have said this. or I could have said this better. So you hit the ground running here, Ethan. But what you said, that there's a difference between knowing and doing. Something that I read beautiful and it absolutely aligns with me is that you don't act from the knowledge you have, but you act from the state you are in.
Wait, can you say that again? I just want us to make sure we all.
Yes.
I want to make sure I'm hearing that. Say that.
Yes.
Say that again.
Yeah. You don't act from the knowledge you have. You act from the state you are in. What I mean by that is we're having this conversation. We both had a beautiful day. We're energized. We were excited for this. And there's a certain state of mind that we came forward with towards this conversation. Now let's flip it. Let's say you had the horrible day, one of the worst days of your life, and so am I. I'm angry, I'm irritated. I'm pretty sure the conversation, even though we're talking about the same principles, the same experience, it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't have the same effect. And I'm pretty sure our audience would feel that too. Something's making sense, but the vibe's not cool. If people talk about, Gen Z loves to talk about the vibe, or so people sense that, and I feel that most of us come from a place where we like to put logic above then state, not realizing that our state is in fact what really affects our decision-making skills, our leading skills, our communication skills, and that is very much important to me. So I think that's what came to my mind when you said those words.
Yeah, well, I'm totally with you, and I mean, I think most of us that have done enough self-reflection would also agree with that. I mean, it's like we could learn, we could be highly educated in decision-making matrices, and have all the perfect skills when it comes to negotiation or whatever it might be. But your internal state will always supersede those skills at some level, right? Which is again why a drum that I'm constantly hitting here is like, what does it take for you to be able to show up to your interactions with people centered, or at the very least with awareness of where your internal state is? What I've always said is like, there's no problem with being in a negative mental state or in a kind of closed off mental state. The problem comes when you're unaware of that, and then you enter in a moment and that shows up, right? The awareness of that in advance, well, hopefully that then allows us to be able to make different choices in the moment. But I mean, from what you've seen, like what does reactive behavior look like in everyday leadership situations? Like if I'm just walking around unaware of my internal state, like how does that show up from what you've seen or experienced?
I have a little label for this, and I used to call myself this. I used to call myself a push notification, because I used to be so reactive. A push notification.
Gotcha.
There's a notification on my phone. I'll be instantly trying to engage with that. There's a Slack message. I'm instantly gonna try to engage with that. There's an email. I'm trying to engage with that as well. We all know what happens when you have 45 tabs open up in your system. The system overloads. It heats up. And what I realized very later on is I was doing the same thing to myself. I was overheating my system. I had so many tabs open, and thus I became more reactive rather than being intentional on what to respond and how to respond. And I'm pretty sure the audience listening to us, they might be wondering, so like, what do? Do we go for a walk? Do we go for a swim? Or like, what does she mean? The goal here is not to pull you back from the number of tasks you do or your ambition or slow you down. The goal here is to make sure that, one, you are aware, as you said, that you are in a reactive mode rather than an intentional mode. And what it does is it does not give you enough time to think, what's the best way to reply to this? How can I leverage the situation? How can I make sure that it's a win-win for everybody involved into this? If I'm having a conversation with my manager, how can I make sure that I present myself in a way that gets me promoted and that shows me as a leader, that makes them think that I bring my team forward and not just myself, rather than being in a reactive mode and thinking once the conversation has been done that, hey, why did I do that? Oh, I forgot to mention that. There are some opportunities and there's some time when you only have that much amount of time to give your best into it. It's like I always think of the Olympians. They only have a few seconds to swim and get from point A to point B. They cannot wait once the bell has rung. They cannot think that, hey, like, will the water be too deep? Will the water be too cold? You just have that specific amount of time and you give your best shot in that time. And I think that's why it's very important for me that, one, you're aware of it, not that you do acknowledge that or you do see patterns that you might be falling into this. It could be in your professional life, it could be outside of that, it could be in your business. How do we really tackle it? And when we talk about intentional response, I don't mean take the sweet time or take, if you're taking 30 seconds, take a minute to respond. What it really means is before you take that action, you prepare yourself for it. It's very similar to, how during winters we keep our car turned on before driving it so that the load is less on the system. Pretty similar to that. That's the metaphor I'm trying to refer to. That we will be talking about, and I would love to share what I do to prep myself up. So the goal is, one, to make yourself aware. Second, prep yourself, and then go in with an intentional response so that you're present, you're actively engaging with the situation, and you're not in a scope of loophole that, hey, I shouldn't have said that, or I could have done that in those scenarios, because those will either take you too much into the future or too much into the past, and neither is in control.
Right. So here's where I think we've come so far. I think you and I are both agreeing that, a foundational trait for leadership or just being an effective human in the world is to be able to recognize your internal state going into situations, and then being able to notice when you're in a reactive state, and then be able to take some action when you're in that reactive state, so you can still show up in that situation in a way that you're going to show up grounded, focused, perhaps curious, perhaps leaning and living into your values. And then, of course, I want to hear about kind of the how, and of course, the phrase goes, or something along the lines of, between, stimulus and response, there is a gap, with the idea of the stimulus maybe being something happened or I'm in a reactive state, and then how I respond to that. How do we then widen that gap so we can see it more clearly and make choices? So I don't know if that's the right segue, but I know you have some really, as you alluded to, some really cool ideas about what we can do to help ground ourselves when we enter these moments so we can be centered.
When you were saying this and asking me about this, one thing that was coming to my mind is, on our everyday basis, we usually have a routine that our calendars packed up. Like you were just telling me that, hey, that it's been a whirlwind for a couple of days. So there are back-to-back meetings. Every meeting requires your full attention. Every meeting requires your absolute best engagement. So how do you really not just ground yourself, but reset yourself? How do you change your quiz, not just with your technical expertise, but with the state, as we were talking about? Because one meeting could require your intense leadership, where you have to have a difficult conversation, but the other meeting could have required, maybe it's a brainstorming session. It needs you to really focus and think upon the long-term effects of something. So you really have to be shifting your gears pretty quick here. And I always say this, that it's the time to reset yourself. that helps you not just being grounded, but bring you clarity as well. You can't see your face in boiling water. You have to let the water sit still to see a reflection in it. What I do and has worked absolutely well for me is breathing. I'm pretty sure with our audience will be thinking, wait, I am breathing. What do you mean? Absolutely, yes. We lucky enough, grateful enough for this beautiful life. Breathing is something that I picked up upon because one, we breathe all the time. It's just that we are not intentional. This was the first thing we started our life with. This will be the last thing we let go of. And you don't need any extra resources. You don't need anything external. You don't have to purchase or go somewhere in a specific place to do this. Wherever you are, sitting on a chair, walking from one conference room to another conference room, sipping your coffee, just do intentional breathing. What I do is a specific breathing technique that helps change your parasympathetic nervous system. In layman's language, it means it shifts your focus or it shifts your beta waves to alpha waves. So from overthinking, overanalyzing stuck, you are now in a position where you're much more focused, but also calm. So you can have clear decisions. You can be present. You can be grounded. You have all the resources possibly needed along with the expertise, skills, and the internal state is aligning for you to take the best decisions possible in those situations. It's called Bhramari Pranama or humming deep breath. What we do is you can be sitting, you can be standing. All you need to do is close your ears and clench your jaws. Inhale, and while exhale, just make a humming sound like There you go.
How's that?
So
That was good.
absolutely. Okay. Yes. Now let's try with closing our ears, closing our eyes. Make sure your jaws are unclenched so that focus on the vibration or the frequency that you're creating. And let's do it together.
Okay.
Inhale. Hum. Let's do one more time. Inhale. Hum. Please don't cry while trying this. Other than that, you can try it anytime. Ethan, how are you feeling? That was just 2 breaths.
I already feel better, more relaxed, and so when maybe let your team know when they see you in your office before a big conversation with your hands over your eyes and ears, you can let them know that you're just getting in a more rest and digest state for them, so they're not freaked out by it. But no, in all seriousness, no, I feel better. I feel better. And by the way, if I could just add something here, just to kind of subscribe to your point here about the breath. It's like, I mean, there's so much science and research about how powerful the breath is, from going from your sympathetic nervous system to parasympathetic nervous system, or from a fight and flight response to a calm rest and digest. And it's like, in all my coaching partnerships, probably my coaching clients are sick and tired of me talking about this, but I'm like almost always starting with, just figure out a breathing exercise for yourself, right? Like, this is low hanging fruit that has some of the most powerful payoff, which is when you just come from that really hard meeting where you just got some really hard feedback or had some conflict with an employee, to now where you have to collaborate. Just taking 3-4 deep breaths with a long exhale is enough to get you into a state where you're more likely showing up in a place that you're going to be curious, you're going to be interested in learning, right? It's almost impossible for us to be curious and with a focus on learning when we're in fight and flight. And so we just go from one meeting, we go to the other, and we think, I know I'm supposed to create psychological safety in this meeting with my team, And yet that's really hard for me to do when I'm in a reactive state. I'm going to be more defensive. I'm going to not listen to people. I'm going to be more focused on being right, because this is our natural instinct when we're in a fight or flight response. And so, look, I love the hummingbird breath. It actually feels better just making that hum. And I would also say for people that, for whatever reason, don't want to get on board with the hummingbird breath, it's just like even one long exhale, or sorry, one long inhale, and then sneak in a little bit more breath and a long extended exhale is enough to keep you centered. In fact, what I'm learned through looking at the science of this is that really what matters most it seems like, is that exhale is longer than your inhale. Like that's the extended part that calms you down. I have a baby at home, and one thing I notice is when a baby's, crying, they'll naturally do that. They'll be crying to calm themselves down. They will do kind of a double inhale. They'll be, then they'll go. So we
Yeah.
naturally come out of the womb with that ability. We evolve that way, and yet we get
Yeah.
into our adult world, and it's like we forget about it. Yet it's a tool that all of us have access to. So, anyways, I'm ranting and raving about this because I am a complete um, uh, convert to this idea. So maybe get us back on track, because I'll let you take it from there.
Absolutely. No, I love that you shared it, and it's absolutely true. You don't have to stick to one thing. What you really have to do is stick to anything that works for you. What works for
Mm-hmm.
me might not work for you, but could work for a third person.
Mm,
Explore as long as you're willing to acknowledge that I do need to change something. I've seen some patterns build up, and it's time to change that. Something I believe is that the resolutions usually don't come from the place that the problem comes from. So if you're in
mm,
a state, or if you're in a frequency that created the issue at the first place, there's a very less
mm,
chance that you can find a resolution within the same frequency. So what Brahmri does is you are vibrating, and I believe in energy. It's you have an aura. People call it aura or energy. There's
mm,
a specific brain frequencies, or your heart is rating or rhythming at a specific vibration or a frequency. What you're really trying to do with this is change that frequency around yourself. That
mm,
does affect your internal states, which in turn affects your how you're thinking, how you're feeling, how you communicate your actions, and manifest the result you want to.
mm.
So this is again called Brahmi Pranayama. There's a lot of breathing techniques out there. Um, Read about them, explore about them, try them, and see what fits
Yeah,
best to you.
yeah. Agreed. Agreed. For all listeners out there, find a breathing practice that works for you. And I think there's kind of two different scenarios you can use for, right? So the hummingbird breath, which I
Yeah,
found pretty powerful in that moment. I think that's, when you have a few minutes to yourself, terrific practice. And at the same time, when I'm in a meeting with somebody right now and it starts getting intense and I start feeling my heart race, and my jaw tighten, maybe I don't want to go into the full hummingbird breath. It might be a little distracting for the other person in the room as I'm
yeah,
humming at them
yeah,
and covering my eyes. But just like you can take a big long inhale with kind of a silent exhale, the other person probably won't even notice. So you can actually use it in the moment when you see yourself getting overstimulated and activated. Um,
absolutely.
I wanted to ask you, and maybe this is just a conversation, maybe you have some additional thoughts on this, but so this tool of breathing is again a tool that can, what I'm understanding as, shift our internal state kind of in real time, so we can be more present, focused, engaged.
Yeah,
And you also kind of circled around the idea of just kind of in general being more grounded and present, more holistically, right? That's not like a
mm-hmm.
moment of breathing. And I think this
Yeah,
circles back to your initial story as well, where, you know, your mom kind of said, "Are you happy?" And, what you've also spoken to before about having a bunch of tabs open. What have you come to learn and experience about just generally being a more grounded and present individual, whether in leadership or life?
Yes, absolutely. I think I like to take you to the other side of it first. How was
Hmm.
that when I wasn't in this state, when I was still in a reactive, high performance environment, always, as I said, in a fight mode. And every morning when I woke up, it felt like I'm going for a war. And I kept
Mm,
on asking myself, if this is my dream job, if I'm doing the business I've always wanted to do, then why am I feeling this? Why
mm,
am I not enjoying this? I'm not thrilled by this. That's when I realized, Ethan, that we as human beings, we have blind spots as well. We are not aware of um, the patterns we are forming. We are not aware of the gaps we have been, or the gaps we could have.
mm,
It's very easy to measure your technical skills. If you
mm,
are leading a team of 10, you're leading a team of 20, you can measure your growth. You
mm,
can measure your technical skills. If you didn't know how to program a language, now you do. It's a measurable skill. You can
mm,
measure such things, but what really don't look into is how do we measure your internal state. Uh,
mm.
Also, because as you referred, a lot of people are not aware of it. So one, if you're not aware of it, second, if you're aware of it, how do you really measure that?
Mm,
Um, and when I think about blind spots, there are such certain things that leads to blind spots because sometimes we are not aware of our behavior, but people around us are pretty much aware of our behavior. There are
right,
times when
right.
one of your team members can say, I'm pretty sure Ethan is going to make that decision, or I'm pretty sure
Mhm,
Ethan would not like the budget cuts, and he would react
mhm,
in a way that, we all know how it's gonna go. So there are
mhm,
behaviors that you might not be aware of yourself, but people around you are very aware of it. So those are the blind spots, those are the gaps. I'm really talking about that when we talk about holistic growth, it's not just your technical expertise that pushes you to a level. I think it does pushes you to a certain level, but then when you talk about a holistic growth, there's also internal state. There's also these gaps and
mhm,
blind spots that we 100% need to be aware of to push ourselves to that level that we are a leader that leaves an impact. We're a leader that people would want to work with. We are a leader that just not is not creating an impact for themselves, but also for the people around themselves.
mm,
And you always want to be being remembered by what you do and not just how you made people feel. And there are often times when people remember you in terms of how you made them feel. And you could be the best programmer, but still, these are the things that absolutely account when you're working in high performance environments. And
mm,
it's like driving a car with smudged windshield. People behind me can see it, but I don't
mm,
know. I'm thinking it's the road is clean ahead. So
mhm,
those are the times when I definitely feel like internal clarity is extremely and equally important as to your external performance, your
mm,
external technical skills, and the knowledge that you carry. Because um, clarity is speed. If let's say if I have all the resources in the world with AI, I think there's nothing that you can't really get yourself speed to, right? But
mm,
even though it's there are these resources, still not everybody is performing up to the level they wish to. Why is that? So it's not the capability, but it's the clarity.
mm,
With clarity is when you would really have the speed and the knowledge. It's combination of that that could lead you to a level that you're an efficient leader, you're a high performer, you are somebody who
mm,
builds a momentum and never looks back. Or even if you had a setback, you can come back from it pretty quick. So I think it's a combination of all of that when we talk about a much more holistic support and growth
mm.
overall.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. So, if we're talking about creating more kind of holistic clarity for ourselves, and I'm hearing that's everything from understanding that we have blind spots, understanding
Mhm.
that there are ways that we show up or impact those around us that we can't necessarily see, but other people can see. Um, there's several kind of concepts there, and I think one thing I'd be interested in exploring with you is just if there's something that our listeners could take away from this in terms of maybe a place to start with creating that internal clarity that is
Yeah,
going to get them, more likely get them on the path to feeling like they're more grounded in general in their life. Like, where might they start with that?
yes, absolutely. Something that I did, and it might feel medieval, but it absolutely worked, and there's science behind it, is it right? There's a lot of experiment and articles on it that writing makes your brain think more in a way
Mm-hmm.
that is efficient. I'm not referring to overthinking or overanalyzing. Rather, it makes you see the difference between what really is that you should hear and what really is just noise in your head. Sometimes we're too much into our head. We're thinking about 10 meetings and which is 2 weeks ahead and forgetting about the conversation you're having right now in the present, and stuff like that. So I think writing was one thing that really brought me back
Mm,
to myself in terms of helping me see what I say, what I feel, and what I do is aligning or not.
mm,
The alignment is important because I could be thinking or feeling any way, but if I do the complete opposite, I'll get the results completely opposite of what I wanted as well.
right.
Right? If you want to be the director of a certain company, but you keep on applying for a senior analyst position, what are the chances you'll get a call for a direct interview? So there has to be an alignment in terms of what you feel, what you say, what you do, and writing helped me because it differentiated that noise from the voice.
Mm,
I started being very intentional about what I want, why I want this, and I started to feel about that. What would make me feel? What would having a real estate business make me
mm,
feel? It's not just about money because, and I did ask myself that if it's about money, even if I do have all the money in the world, will it make me feel at peace? Will it make me feel the self of achievement? Will it make me feel or give me a sense of purpose to my life?
mm,
I did ask myself all these questions. Why shy away? Um, Ask yourself all these hard questions, write them down, write for yourself so that you can tell who you are, why you are doing that, what's the intention and purpose behind it, so that it gives you clarity, it gives you confidence in decision making. And rather than putting your legs in multiple boats, you exactly know what you want to do, why you want to do, and how you're going to do it.
mm,
So writing was one thing that really brought me back to myself.
mm. I love that. And it strikes me that what you're talking about or what you're accomplishing through journaling and writing is,
Yeah.
what they call metacognition. And
Mm-hmm.
this is metacognition is something that one of our team members, Hannah, talks a lot about. Hannah, if you're listening, shout out to you, Hannah, for keeping this front and center for us. Because again, whether just human beings in general, but leaders especially, it's really important that we're thinking about how we're thinking, which is what metacognition is. Right? We're walking around thinking and reacting. We're not always stepping back and being like, how am I thinking, and how do I want to think? Um,
Right.
I think like an example of this for me was actually, it's funny that you bring up writing and journaling because I've generally been a journaler. Most mornings, given everything going on in my life, I probably haven't picked up the journal for 3 months. I picked it up this
Yeah.
morning. And the reason I picked
Yeah.
it up this morning was because I had, you know, 3 coaching calls today, and I had this podcast that we're recording, and just a day full of fairly intense dialogues. And I
Yeah.
woke up feeling very anxious and kind of
Mm.
not excited to start the day. And I just remember this thing about metacognition, which is start writing. Like, what am I thinking about right now? Which I did, but that also allowed me to then write about why I'm doing the work that I'm doing and what really
Right.
inspires me, and just also kind of giving myself a little bit of a pep talk. And for me, that was remembering, like, in all I do, go out and do the best you can and have the courage to be disliked. And what that really means to me is like, no, don't, I'm not walking around trying to piss everybody off and for them to dislike me, but being like, if
Yeah.
I am okay with people not liking me, I am
Mm.
going to be able to focus more on how I can just show up to the best of my ability because I'm less worried about protecting myself. And it was just a reminder of like, well, then why do I do what I do? I do what I do because one of my values is growth, and that's helping, and that's growing myself, but also
Yeah.
helping stimulate growth in other people. And so, but I also like how you're taking it as at an even higher level, which is like,
Mm.
what really brings me meaning or fulfillment in life? Like, what really will make me happy? Like, what really matters to me? What are my core values? What is my
Mm.
mission? And I think through that process, as I think you're implying, and what I've experienced, is that we can get more clarity on our current life, and we may find that the things that were driving me and motivating thing in me is fuel that I'm running thin on, and I need to lean into something deeper and more meaningful to keep me going, or making changes in my life, right? Because it doesn't align with my values and things like that. So, I think when I'm hearing what you're talking about here today with the breathing, of kind of being able to get into a more focused present state, and
Yeah.
this journaling, writing, metacognition process,
Yeah.
let me know if you think differently, but I would think that if leaders were to commit to those two practices, they're going to find that over time they're going to feel a bit more centered, more grounded, and they're going to be more likely to show up in a way in which they strive to show up as a leader.
Absolutely. If you are in the shoes where you have the amazing job, you have a good team, you are in a position
Mm.
that a 10-year-old of your 10-year-old version would have dreamed to be in,
Mm.
but you still find yourself stuck somewhere, or you find the constant feeling of missing something or feeling heavy at all the times. It could be anything. These two things will always help you get some of the answers that you're trying to seek.
Mm.
Sometimes we don't even know the questions, but we're just
Right.
looking for something to work out, right?
Mm.
What it really does, and one thing that you did mention I would like to highlight is that even if you're not seeking clarity, even if you're not trying to go into these deeper questions, even at the base level, we all have moments of anxiousness. We all have moments of stress or anger or lack of confidence before heading into a big presentation. As simple as writing that, hey, I'm gonna kill this presentation, or I'm at my best level and I know that I'm prepared. Just writing that down slows your overthinking mind. It brings you back into the present and gives you your confidence back. There are times even you will not believe that if I'm having an argument with somebody, or it got heated about something, or if you're not on the same page, rather than having a conversation, I'll take a moment, go back to my journal and write, because oftentimes it's the
Mm.
emotions behind that we forget the context of the conversation, and we so looped into the emotions of it that it gives you stress. It makes you anxious about the things you can't control and makes you question everything. As I'm writing it down, I often talk to myself that it doesn't even matter.
Mm.
And then I
Exactly.
get back in the call
Yeah.
and I'm like, you know what? You're right about this.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So it really slows you without letting you know that it's slowing you down, which is intentional, which is stillness that I speak about, and which is absolutely something you can do anytime, anywhere. Um, for everything that you're seeking, might have answers hidden in here.
Yeah. That's a great point. What resonated with me in that is just the idea that all the things that we think are really big deals and problems, once we can slow down and get centered, we start to realize that this isn't actually that big of a deal. It actually doesn't
Yes.
matter, right? Like,
Right.
it's just a problem, and life is full of problems and puzzles to solve, and
Yes.
this is just another one. Or, in the grand scheme of things, you know, we're all on this earth for a limited period of time, depending, how you view it. And like, is this really that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things? So I love that. Well, Janisha, I'll work on landing this plane here, but one thing I just wanted to maybe ask you to close with is, if our listeners could only walk away with one idea, like they're only going to remember one thing from listening to this episode, which is very often the case. We walk away with one idea. What would you hope that would be?
Very interesting. I think there are two things that are coming to my mind.
That's
One
fair. You can
is
have two. Yeah.
One is remember that it's not your capability, but clarity that could be stopping you from taking the next best decision of your life. The second is I'm somebody who loves to listen to podcasts, to have a conversation, but listening about how to align with your internal state while you're working on your technical skills or expertise or external goals. Listening about clarity will not bring you clarity. What really will bring you clarity is when you put this into action for yourself by yourself.
Yeah.
I cannot write for you. You cannot write for me. If it worked for even one of us, it might work for you as well. So the whole scheme of writing or taking a moment to yourself, doing box breathing or primary, I put all of this into the umbrella of stillness. And stillness is not the idea to bring you back or slow you down. Rather, it's removing the noise which is slowing you down. So if there's anything that you wish to take away from this is I absolutely wish that you listen to us and you put this into use, because you cannot just gain clarity from listening to us.
Amen. Agreed. You know, you don't self-develop by reading self-development books. you you self-development by putting the stuff into action, which often
Absolutely.
means you read less self-development books because you're busy putting the stuff into action. So
Absolutely.
I concur with that message and everything you're saying there, with the punchline for me being something you said early on in the conversation, right? You don't act from the knowledge you have, you act from the state that you're in. Jinesha, where can people find more about you? Are you present on the internet? Where can people learn more about you and your work?
Yes, absolutely. If you are intrigued about the family or how we do that or what my
Mm.
story was, and if that's something that you aligned with, you can find my conversation or my story on YouTube on a TEDx platform. If you do wish to connect with me or you wish to do the primary together, I'm more than happy to connect with you on Instagram or LinkedIn. It's my first name, last name, Jinesha Jain.
Awesome. We will link to the TEDx talk in the show notes, so you can just find it there. We'll also link to your social medias that you mentioned. And so go check out the TEDx. Again, it was inspiring for me. If you've listened to this podcast for a long time, I think it will resonate with you as well. And I just want to thank you again for coming on the show. This was a great conversation. I got a lot out of it, and I hope that your voice keeps getting out there in the world, because I think we need a voice like yours, sharing the messages you're sharing.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for having me. It was such a wonderful conversation. And what I'm really excited is that from your audience, let's see who actually does this and comes back to you and be like, hey, so you know what? I did this, and this is how I'm feeling now. I mean, I'm quite excited to share and learn about those experiences.
Awesome. That sounds good. Well, if you do any of these practices and you have experiences with it, feel free to shoot us an email, contact@nashconsulting.com, and we'll leave it there. Thanks everybody for listening. Keep tuning in for future episodes. Until next time.